Well, I'm back to deliver on the horror and gory goodness. I finally can rank the Evil Dead franchise. So let's do this. And there are 5 entries in this series. And without making this video way too long, let's go ahead and kick it off with number 5. And I know a lot of people really love this movie, but at number 5, I'm going to put Evil Dead 2. So, this movie, to me, is a classic horror comedy, but it gets really weird and it's just not as horrific as the original. So, this is basically like a remake of the original. It's got a very different tone, and you're introduced back to Ash Williams and Linda. So they both go to the cabin in the woods, and the evil takes over very early in this film, and his girlfriend Linda gets possessed, and he also gets possessed. So he fights it off, and there's also a subplot where some of these new characters come in, and they are very highly forgettable. But I don't want to say that this comedy didn't work for me, but it's very over the top, and it's not really horror. I mean, it is. I mean, there are buckets of gore in here, but I just prefer the brutality in Evil Dead. And this isn't a bad movie at all. I just thought that the comedy elements really doesn't work for me. But I still have a fun time with this, and you definitely get that introduction to his catchphrase, groovy, when he gets the chainsaw as a hand. Probably one of the most recognizable uh, character traits of Ash Williams, with his boomstick and his chainsaw. It's really awesome. But this also ends with the events of Army of Darkness, and I do like that ending. But of course, Army of Darkness gets more spotlight. But overall, this movie's fine, but I just like a couple more over it. So people either love the comedy or the brutal violence. I like the brutal violence better than the comedy. So at number 5, Evil Dead 2. And my number 4 pick is gonna be Army of Darkness. Now, hear me out. This movie is a little bit better than Evil Dead 2, but it's very, very bonkers as well. I mean, this might be a little bit more over the top than Evil Dead 2. But I'm just going to sound like a broken record. The comedy just doesn't work for me. But you definitely get some zany moments in here where Ash reads from the Necronomicon to try and get back to his time, but he develops an evil doppelganger of himself. And then you get the whole Gulliver's Travels gag, where he just steps on little clones of himself. Because I'm like, what am I watching? But this movie is like full medieval fantasy, and I really do enjoy it. But this movie focuses more on fantasy than horror. And this could be labeled more family friendly, in my opinion. It's still not a bad movie. I pretty much gave all these movies a B or an A. But Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness both got Bs. Because they're not bad films. I just like the realism and violence to it more. But yeah. That was Army of Darkness at number 4. And at number 3 is going to be Evil Dead Rise. And this is, of course, the new entry. And I just literally talked about it, so yeah. It still really does work as a great entry in this series. It's highly rewatchable, but I don't think it's in the vein of the original or the remake. But this movie is definitely brutal, and it definitely doesn't let up on the violence towards kids. Because, I mean, you definitely see a lot of bloodshed in this movie. And one thing I forgot to mention about the Easter eggs in this movie is when Lily first gets possessed, no, Ellie first gets possessed, there is an homage to like the original Evil Dead with like the tree rape scene, of course, and the wires from a car like hold her up, and it's really rough to watch. But there is also the moment when the sister and the youngest daughter get off the elevator. There's an homage to The Shining with the blood coming out. That's a really cool Easter egg. And there is also the brutal death on the final Deadite monster, which is just basically 3 heads melded together, and they just get into like the wood chipper, and there's a chainsaw that decapitates her, but then they double tap her. And it is brutal. But I really do enjoy this one. I'm really hoping to see it again very soon. But that was my number 3 pick, Evil Dead Rise. My number 2 pick is going to shock a lot of people because I actually gave this movie an A+. It's going to be the original Evil Dead. So, this movie was released in 1981, and it introduces Ash Williams and 4 of his friends, and they just want to spend like a weekend in a cabin. But then they find the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, which is the Book of the Dead, and they decide to read from it, and the evil is unleashed. And this movie is horrifying. But some of the makeup effects and some of the special effects really don't hold up as well as they used to 40 plus years ago. But this movie still does work, and it's not as scary as it used to be to me. But it is still a really good horror classic. And not to mention, it is the debut of Sam Raimi. So, thank you, Sam Raimi, for delivering one of the best horror movies ever made. But, pretty much speaks for itself. You just have a group of friends just surviving the night. And, yeah, that's my number 2 pick, the original Evil Dead. Which leaves me at number 1, and I really pondered on my number 2 and 1 pick, but I think I have it right. My number 1 pick, of course, is Evil Dead 2013, also known as the remake. But this movie is definitely on the gore scale. There is very horrific violence in this, especially when the first 2 girls get their demise. Especially the mixed girl, and she cuts her jaw with like a mirror fragment, and then Paul, I believe his name is, the guy with the glasses, he bashes her head in with like a toilet seat, and it's really hard to watch. But you definitely do have the callback to the original Evil Dead with the Deadite in the cellar, and that is really, really creepy as well. But the blonde girl who has her hand possessed, she has to grab like an electric knife and just amputate it. Ugh. Yeah, it's very hard to watch. But once this movie wraps up and Mia's friends are dead, the sky just rains blood, and it's just her and her doppelganger. So they just go one-on-one, and you have the most epic final battle of any horror movie that I've seen, where she gets her hand caught under a car, so she has to like pull herself free, and then she finds a chainsaw and sticks it right down the demon's throat. It's definitely the most metal death in horror. And this is very, very red. But I've seen this movie quite a few times, and it's definitely the right way to remake Evil Dead and just make it really, really gruesome and awesome. And that is my pick for number 1. And there you have my Evil Dead ranking. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I've got 2 more videos to film this month. I'll have my Covenant review tomorrow, and on Sunday I'm going to go ahead and film the movies I watched in April. And that's going to be another long one, so bear with me. I watched a lot of movies this month. But other than that, before I do go, this is month 2 of not buying any books, so there will not be another book haul this month. But that's going to come maybe in the near future, but I'm probably just going to take a break on some of that. And I'll probably talk about books again, but I just got to think of like some ideas, so bear with me on that. This is movie and book reviews, so you'll get like movie content and book content, but it just depends on what ideas I have. But other than that, I'll see you guys tomorrow for my Covenant review. Enjoy the rest of your night. I'm going to go to bed. Adios. Peace.